The alarm goes off at 6:30. You hit snooze. 7 minutes later, it screams again. You silence it. This happens 3 more times until you finally drag yourself out of bed at 7:45, already late, already defeated, already broken before the day even begins. You tell yourself tonight will be different. Tonight you'll go to bed early. Tonight you'll finally start that thing you've been planning. But tonight comes and you're scrolling, you're numb, you're avoiding the same truth you've been running from for months, maybe years. Here's the question that matters. If you can't win the first battle of the day, the battle against your own comfort, how do you expect to win any battle that follows? And here's the deeper one. What would your life actually look like if you stopped negotiating with yourself and just did the hard thing every single morning for 90 days straight? Stay with me, because what I'm about to share isn't theory. It's the exact blueprint one man used to completely reconstruct his existence, and it started at 5 in the morning. His name was Daniel, 32 years old. He worked the evening shift at a warehouse, loading boxes, scanning labels, coming home at midnight with aching shoulders and a mind too tired to think but too restless to sleep. He lived in a 1-bedroom apartment on the edge of the city where the walls were thin and the neighbors were loud. And the rent was still barely manageable. Every month was the same calculation. Rent, utilities, groceries, maybe enough left over for gas. There was no savings account. There was no plan. There was just survival, one paycheck away from disaster. Daniel would lie in bed some nights, staring at the ceiling, listening to the hum of the refrigerator, wondering how he ended up here. He had friends from high school who owned homes now. He had a cousin his age who just got promoted to management. And here he was, still renting, still struggling, still stuck. The worst part wasn't the money. It was the feeling. The feeling that time was passing and he wasn't moving, that he was working hard but going nowhere, that his life had become a loop he couldn't escape. Then, one Thursday afternoon, his mother called. Her voice was shaky, different. She told him she'd been to the doctor. They found something. They weren't sure yet, but they needed to run more tests. She tried to sound strong, but Daniel could hear the fear underneath. They talked for a while, and before she hung up, she said something that hit him like a punch to the chest. She said, "Daniel, I don't know what's going to happen with all this, but promise me you won't waste your life. Promise me you'll do something that matters. I didn't raise you to just survive." He sat there after the call ended, phone still in his hand, and something inside him cracked open. It wasn't anger, it wasn't motivation, it was something deeper. It was the realization that he'd been lying to himself, that all the excuses, all the "I'll start next month" and "I'm too tired" and "I don't have time" were just walls he built to protect himself from the fear of trying and failing. His mother's words wouldn't leave him. "I didn't raise you to just survive." And he knew right then that surviving was exactly all he'd been doing. 2 days later, still shaken, still thinking, Daniel went to a small diner near his apartment. He'd been going there for years, always ordered the same thing, always sat at the counter. The owner, a man named Vincent, was in his mid-60s, calm, always moving with purpose, always seemed like he had his life together. They'd talked before, small talk mostly, but that day Vincent noticed something was off. He asked Daniel if he was all right, and for some reason, maybe because he needed to say it out loud, Daniel told him everything. The job, the stuck feeling, his mom, the fear that he'd wake up at 50 and realize he'd done nothing with his one life. Vincent listened, didn't interrupt, just nodded. When Daniel finished, Vincent poured himself a coffee, leaned against the counter, and said, "You want to know the only difference between you and the people you think are ahead of you? They started. That's it. They didn't wait to feel ready. They didn't wait for permission. They just started. And most of them started early in the morning before the world woke up and told them all the reasons they couldn't." Vincent explained it simply. He told Daniel that most people waste the most valuable hours of their day. The hours between 5 and 7 in the morning are quiet, undisturbed, completely yours. No emails, no distractions, no excuses. If you wake up at 5 every day and use 2 focused hours to build a skill, that's 14 hours a week, 60 hours a month, over 700 hours a year. That's the equivalent of nearly 18 full work weeks spent just on your own growth. While everyone else is asleep, you're building a completely different future. Vincent looked at him and said, "Discipline is doing what you said you'd do, long after the feeling you set it in has left. Motivation is garbage. It comes and goes like weather. Discipline is the foundation of everything that lasts." Daniel asked what he was supposed to do with those hours. Vincent told him the system was simple. 2 hours. Hour 1, learn something that can change your income. A real skill, not passive watching, active learning. Could be coding, design, writing, marketing, sales, video editing, anything with market value that you can practice and improve. Hour 2, invest in your body and mind. Walk, run, stretch, lift something heavy, read 20 pages of a real book, write down your plan for the day, sit in silence and think. The rules were non-negotiable. Same time every day, even weekends. No phone for the first hour. In bed by 9:30, no exceptions. The first 2 weeks would be brutal. Your body would hate you, your mind would beg you to quit, but somewhere around day 21, it would stop being a fight. It would start being who you are. Daniel left the diner that day and made a decision. He set his alarm for 4:55 a.m. That first night, he barely slept. He was anxious, doubting, already thinking of reasons to quit before he even started. When the alarm went off in the darkness, every part of him wanted to stay in bed. It was cold. It was quiet. It felt wrong. But he got up. He splashed water on his face, made coffee, sat down at his tiny kitchen table, and opened his laptop. He decided to learn web design. He didn't know why exactly. It just seemed like something useful, something people paid for. The first morning, he barely understood anything. The tutorials felt overwhelming. His eyes were heavy, but he stuck with it. 1 hour. Then he laced up his sneakers and walked for 40 minutes in the empty streets as the city started to wake. He came back, read 15 pages of a book on focus, wrote 3 goals for the day, and got ready for work. The second morning was harder. His body was exhausted. The third morning, he almost gave in. By the end of the first week, he felt like he was living in slow motion. He was irritable, sore, lonely. His co-workers noticed he seemed different, distracted. He didn't tell anyone what he was doing. He didn't want to hear the doubt, the questions, the "that's not realistic" comments. This was his. The second week, the loneliness hit hard. He'd wake up in the dark and feel completely isolated, like he was the only person in the world awake, trying, struggling. He wanted to quit a dozen times, but every time he thought about stopping, he heard his mother's voice. "Don't waste your life." So he kept going. Somewhere around day 18, something shifted. Waking up at 5 started to feel less like torture and more like routine. His body adjusted. He started going to bed earlier naturally because he was tired. The web design tutorials started to make sense. He wasn't just watching anymore. He was understanding. He built a simple landing page. It looked terrible, but it was his. He kept walking every morning, and his mind started to clear. Ideas came to him during those walks. Solutions to problems he didn't even know he was working on. He started to feel something he hadn't felt in years. Momentum. By day 40, Daniel had built 3 practice websites. He joined an online community of designers, started asking questions, getting feedback. People were helpful. He realized he wasn't alone in learning. Everyone started somewhere. He kept the same schedule. 5 a.m. every single day. No negotiations. Some mornings he wanted to sleep in. He didn't. Some mornings he felt like he wasn't making progress. He showed up anyway. Consistency became his identity. He wasn't the guy with talent. He was the guy who didn't miss. At day 63, something unexpected happened. Someone in the online design community reached out. They needed a simple website for their small business. They offered $300. Daniel almost said no. He didn't feel ready. But he remembered what Vincent said. They didn't wait to feel ready. They just started. So he said yes. He spent 2 weeks on it, working every morning, revising, learning new tools as he went. When he delivered it, the client loved it. They paid him $300 for something he built in his morning hours. It wasn't life-changing money, but it was proof. Proof that the hours mattered. Proof that the skill was real. By day 90, Daniel had completed 4 paid projects. He'd made over $1,000 on the side, but more than that, he was different. He walked differently. He talked differently. He had something most people around him didn't have. He had proof that he could commit to something and see it through. His manager at the warehouse noticed the change and asked him if he wanted to move to a day shift role in their logistics coordination team. It paid a little more, better hours, less physical strain. Daniel took it. The new schedule meant he could keep his mornings sacred and still have energy for client work in the evenings. 1 year later, Daniel had left the warehouse entirely. He was working as a full-time freelance web designer, making more than he ever had, working from home, choosing his projects. He paid off his debt. He helped his mother with her medical bills. He moved to a better apartment with actual sunlight. But the most important thing hadn't changed. He still woke up at 5 a.m. Not because he had to anymore, because it was who he was now. The early morning wasn't a strategy anymore. It was his identity. It was the time when he proved to himself every single day that he was the kind of person who kept promises, the kind of person who didn't negotiate with comfort, the kind of person who built the life he wanted 1 quiet hour at a time. So now I'm talking directly to you, not to some character in a story. To you, right now, reading this, listening to this. You know exactly what you've been avoiding. You know exactly what you need to start. You know the skill you should be learning. You know the habit you need to build. You know the version of yourself that's waiting on the other side of consistency. And you know, deep down, that nothing changes until you change. Not your circumstances, not your luck. You. The question isn't whether waking up early works. The question is whether you're willing to find out. Tomorrow morning your alarm will go off, and you'll have a choice. The same choice Daniel had, the same choice every person who's ever built something meaningful has had. You can hit snooze and stay the same, or you can get up and become different. Here's your challenge. Set your alarm for 5 a.m. tomorrow. Just tomorrow. See what happens when you win that first battle. Use 1 hour to work on the one skill that could change your income. Use the second hour to move your body and clear your mind. Do it once. Then decide if you want to do it again. And if you accept this challenge, I want you to do something. Comment below and tell me what skill you're going to build in your first hour. What's the one thing you've been putting off that you're finally going to start? Write it down. Make it real. And if this message hit you the way I hope it did, share this video with one person who needs to hear it. Someone who's stuck. Someone who's waiting. Someone who's ready. Subscribe if you want more truth like this. But more importantly, show up tomorrow at 5 a.m. and prove to yourself that you're not the person you were yesterday. Because here's the final truth. Your life won't change when you feel like it. It'll change when you decide it will. So let me ask you this. When your alarm goes off tomorrow morning in the dark and cold and quiet, and every part of you wants to stay in that warm bed, who are you going to choose to be?